you. Initial gateway consideration for 26 Drualla Rd Jamberoo. Are there any questions to the Director? No questions. Is there any opposition to the recommendation? This is a planning matter. We'll need a motion. Could I get a mover and seconder, please, if there's no opposition? Councillor Way, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Steele, thank you. Put that motion. All those in favour, that is that we endorse.
Drualla Road 9.2.
Yep.
Do I get an opportunity to speak against it, Mr. Mayor?
I did ask. Well, I haven't put the motion yet. We've got a motion. You may speak. I'll ask the mover if you wish to speak first. Did you wish to speak to it? Okay. Councillor Sloan, you have the floor.
Mr. Mayor, I note this brings back terrible memories of my worst moment in council over the last 4 years. You know, I'd laid my heart and soul on the line to protect the black line in law of IREP 2, protecting the size of Jamberoo, the most bitter defeat in my whole 4 years here by far. But in researching this, I have found that in fact they have repealed IREP 2. The black line no longer exists on the map. So the debate that we had last time about what's legal and what's not, and there was a lot of debate at that time and different lawyers' opinions and all the rest of it, doesn't apply here. But we have had some correspondence. I think we've all received several emails in the last few days from 3 or 4 different parties in Jamberoo who are all complaining pretty much of the same thing. Haven't they done enough? You know, we've now increased the size of Jamberoo in terms of the number of lots in the village by more than 30% in the 4 years that we've been here. So I know that I have no solid grounds really, apart because it is in the Kiama Urban Strategy. The lot is identified. The Kiama Urban Strategy does talk about staging these over a long period, but we seem to have crunched them all into a 4-year period, which is very unfortunate and upsetting for the people who've written into us. So I'd like to just oppose this and hopefully look at it again in a few years' time when the lots of all these new subdivisions in Drualla Road and the other big one have been sold.
Thank you, Councillor Sloan. I've also had calls from people supporting it. I don't know whether other councillors have, from residents of Jamberoo. So it isn't all one way, as I say. The other point I'd make is, has the LEP been formally repealed, or is it still in process?
Through Mr.
Not
Mayor,
LEP,
the IREP.
Regional, IREP.
Yeah, the state government has repealed some 16 instruments, and that's all the regional plans statewide. The enacting date for that is the 5th of August. So, whilst that hasn't been done as yet, it certainly has been put before Parliament and endorsed, and it will happen on the 5th of August.
And the number of blocks that we were, or the number of housing units we were originally requested to provide in the regional plan, compared to what we have in the strategy, urban strategy.
Yes.
Do you have an idea of those figures?
Yes, through Mr. Mayor, the adopted urban strategy for Kiama has approximately 1,280 house or new dwelling identified. Some of those are greenfield and some are infill, as opposed to the regional plan, the former regional plan, which had us down for some 1,900. So there was a disparity there between our urban strategy, which was adopted by council, and the regional plan. So there's around about a 700 shortfall in our Kiama urban strategy.
Okay. All right, Councillor Sloan.
I do have a question this time, Mr. Mayor, through the General Manager for the Director. Now, with the repeal of IREP 2, the objectives there in terms of protecting the valley, the valley and the village atmosphere, etc. What mechanism can we use in the future to try and protect those characteristics about Jamberoo with IREP gone?
Through Mr. Mayor, the whole intent of the repeal of all the regional plans is the basis that the objectives that each of those regional plans was putting forward is now reflected in the local plans through the standard instrument, through the standard template. So, with the zones and the objectives of the zones, it basically reflects what was achieved through the regional environment plan. So that's why it has been repealed, because it's reflected more appropriately in the local instrument.
Can you hear the directors and myself clearly when we're... Yeah, okay. Got a very loud hum in the room. Yeah, we're not sure where it is. We can't find it.
Well, it would be if we weren't streaming.
All right. Any other question, Councillor Honey?
Look, I just agree totally with Councillor Sloan that, and I would like to get the black line redrawn around, and not only Jamberoo, but Gerringong and even Kiama for that matter, because it seems now that now is time to do a bit of strategic planning, to actually plan for the future rather than the ad hoc development that seems to be happening within the municipality. And we have no great plan for what's going to happen in 2020 and 2030. I think it's really time that we sat down and drew these black lines and had some control over the development that's going on in this town.
These were all in, and you should have a copy of it, I think, the Kiama Urban Strategy, which was drawn up at the time of the LEP, which was subjected to exhaustive community consultation at the time. And that's where this is drawn from. It was in that strategy, which is still applicable because of the current LEP. The difference is the IREP, which has now been folded in some sense into the LEP. They've put a template out, I believe, statewide, which now covers all councils in the state. No, I don't. No, I think what I'm saying is that, as I understand it, it's been folded into our LEP under the template that we have in the LEP. All right, any other questions to the Director? Did I have a motion?
I've just got one question. As part of this, there's also a clause in the LEP that is required to be changed. I read through it several times and think that I can understand it now, but I'd be really interested to know what impact that may have on subdivision of other small land holdings in and around Jamberoo. And I just feel like we haven't had a lot of time to consider that clause that's being changed as a result to make this possible.
Mr. Director?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. That particular clause is really an administrative one, and it exists in the standard template, but it wasn't adopted by this council originally. And basically, it only refers to those instances where you have a split zone on a property, where part of that split zone is either a residential, commercial, or industrial use. So, I mean, the incidence of that here in Kiama is, it's usually only created through a planning proposal. And when you have this planning proposal, if this does go through, it would create a situation where you have a parcel of land that will have a split zone on it. That would, a subdivision application obviously would ensure to have that residential component split off the rural part. The rural part would be less than 40 hectares, so would thus be contrary to the provisions of the LEP for the rural zone. So this just allows and recognises that where that does occur, that it is okay to have a residual parcel of less than the 40 hectares. So it's really a technical issue and really would only come into play in scenarios such as this that would go through a planning proposal.
Could you just outline, I'll come back to you, Councillor Honey, could you just outline the process that'll happen if this was approved tonight?
If this is endorsed by, if this was endorsed by council tonight, staff prepare a report that goes to the gateway process. The gateway is with the Department of Planning. If they approve of the gateway, it would then come back to council to be publicly exhibited. They may ask for a public hearing, but I suggest that would be unlikely in this situation. But as it is a straightforward rezoning, it would have to be publicly exhibited. At the completion of that exhibition, staff would then report back to council and give a recommendation. having regard to any of the submissions that have been made, and then the decision would be with council.
Thank you. Councillor Honey?
Yeah, the residual 29.04 hectares, that is then sterilised from subdivision for all time?
Through you, Mr Mayor, by the very nature of the LEP, it wouldn't be able to be subdivided any further because it's a rural parcel of less than 40 hectares.
Right.
Thank you. Any other questions? The move of the motion was? Councillor Way. I think you wish to write a reply, Councillor Way.
Given all the comments here, it's not that I disagree with Councillor Sloan or Honey, but we don't have a black line anymore, so we've got to go through the gateway process. But I think from what they've said, we should be looking at some sort of demarcation lines in view of all what's going on. But now it's not there, so we use the gateway process and see what happens after that.
Thank you. Put the motion. We need show of hands. It's the planning matter. Yes, show of hands. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Declare it carried. We move